See, things like that, you don't forget that stuff. I don't give a shit if I live to be 500 years old. I don't dream much anymore. Once in a while, my wife will shake me and say, wake up, wake up. I'm dreaming that again. Not necessarily that episode, but something like that. Something where the animal in me is out again. I made a solemn vow when I got to service I'd never pick up a gun again, and I haven't.
This is the story of ordinary men who went to war on Christmas Day, 1944. It is not a history of the conflict in Europe, its leaders, their strategies, the victories and defeats. Our story is the personal account of 5 young men, soldiers of the 17th Airborne Division, 681st Glider Field Artillery Battalion, B Battery, who fought their way from the Bulge to the Rhine and survived.
You do things that you never thought you were capable of doing. And when this period passes and your conscience and your reasoning power come back and the animal goes inside of you, your conscience won't leave you alone, no matter how many years you live. So what you have to do 2 things. Number 1, you have to forgive yourself, because you're the only one that can do that. Number 2, you have to make a solemn vow that that animal will never come out again.
December 16, 1944. Desperate to halt the Allied advance toward the Rhine, Hitler orders a massive counterattack through the Ardennes forest. The German High Command sees little hope for success, but obeys. Under the combined leadership of Generals Dietrich, Manteuffel, Brandenberger, and Blumentritt, 4 German army groups attempt to split the Allied command by driving swiftly toward the Belgian port of Antwerp. The Battle of the Bulge begins. General Eisenhower orders the 17th Airborne to link up with embattled Allied units and drive the Germans from Belgium.
Christmas Eve, I'll never forget Christmas Eve. We were taken down, and we were the first, 17th was the first division that ever was flown into combat, an entire division.
I remember seeing the white cliffs of Dover, and then as we landed, it was dark and eerie. And as we landed there, we went to some kind of a French outpost or some kind of a barracks out there. In fact, it was colder inside of the building than it was outside.
From there, which I do believe was the next morning, which is Christmas Day, we were taken by trucks up near the front. And when you started hearing the guns, you were close. So the truck stopped, we all got out and walked up this road.
That was bad out there. But the first 2 days of that first battle, we was all chickened, we was all yelling.
You're never sure if what you see is really there until you hear like angry bees or somebody that pulls up her zipper real fast. You know you're being shot at.
When those shells came at me, buddy, I was scared. I'm telling you, I was scared. And I would say I was scared what it seemed to me was a long time. But it probably was only 10 or 15 seconds, you know. Jesus Christ, this is it. You know, they got me. I got to do something. I'm calling on my instincts. What am I going to do?
There was an awful lot of fighting, a lot of dead. What upset all of us, I believe, at St. Vith was the Tiger, German Tiger and Panther tanks against our gasoline Sherman tanks that they called Sears and Roebuck coffins, and also their 88 artillery was tremendous. They had Neville Werfers, which we called Screaming Memes, which were rockets, and I think they shot 60 at once out of tubes. And there was an awful lot of artillery and tank fire.
Guys are getting hit, and they lay there and they cry for a medic. And they die. I saw one fella, I looked at him and his whole rib cage was pulled back, and I could see his heart and I could see his lungs. He lived. Another guy got shot in the hip. He died.
Guy got hit right beside of me, but I never got hit. I hit in the helmet. I got a shrapnel cut my bag off of me, but I never got wounded or nothing. I don't know why. But
I think an awful lot of them got killed by small arms, and of course, an awful lot of men were killed by shrapnel. I remember my first two members of the AA 17th that I personally saw, one of which was being brought back on the hood of a Jeep by the medics, and they hit a mine, and the body was blown up and was hanging clear up the top of a telephone pole. Another one going into St. Vith, I can remember alongside the road. You remember the 17th Airborne insignia on the fellow's coat, and he had no head.
But if you want to talk about somebody being scared, you were just uptight, you don't know what you were doing. I mean, we knew what we were doing, but you just followed the leader, that's all in my case. Just a 19-year-old boy, I mean, you know, just do what you were told.
Well, that was basically our baptism of fire. Maybe the town was a mile away, but we called it the area of St. Vith. That's where we first got it. Our baptism.
The winter of 1944 in Europe was one of the coldest on record, adding to the misery of war. For the young men of the 681st, life on the line was a new reality.
No one can describe how miserable that you can be. And one of the fellows in our outfit, and he certainly was no coward, he became so mentally disturbed, he put his arms around a tree and pulled a pin on a hand grenade and blew his hand off.
I can even remember sleeping on the hood of the Jeep because it was so damn cold, buddy. You couldn't sleep if you wanted to. You'd have buddy systems, like you would say. Well, it brings back into mind that a bundling system. You get together, you hug your buddy. You did want to hug him. You loved the guy because he's in the same boat as you are. You know, so you had to improvise.
it was a damn crime to see our boys frozen feet, didn't have no boots on, but they could get some sizes, overcoat, unshaved, just dragging. But they just kept moving up and fighting.
A typical day in the Bulge, as far as I can recollect, was you slept little. A good soldier will always sleep when nobody's telling him what to do.
And I'm laying on a bunch of potatoes, and I know I knocked off. I was sleepy, tired, and then all of a sudden somebody said tank attack. I ran out of that little bin. I didn't have my helmet on. I didn't have a carbine. I'm looking around like if I'm going to battle it with my fist or something. What's going on? What's going on, you know?
Hell, we went 6 weeks and couldn't take a bath. You'd improvise. You'd use your helmet. You put some water in it. You clean it up, get a little refreshing. You turn around, your socks are dirty. You're beginning to smell a little bit.
Finally, you get a change of clothes. If it's not too cold, you change your clothes.
As long as we were there, I never took my clothes off. I think I took my boots off once when saying that somebody told us if you get some straw and put it in your galoshes, you know, your feet will be a little bit warm, you get better circulation.
It wasn't as easy to walk, but your feet were warm. I've seen frozen feet that were actually black.
We had about 20% of our casualties with amputated toes, amputated feet from frostbite and everything, because we did not have the equipment at that time.
And you ate when you could. In other words, you never got very hungry because your stomach was so tight, you had no hungry feeling.
The food, I mean, basically the food was what you could carry sometimes would be K rations, okay? But sometimes you come across the chicken just laying on the side of the road. We'd become butchers. We'd take the damn chicken, wring its neck, get some snow, melt the snow into the helmet, warm it up, and cook it, and then eat. Because one buddy, when you're hungry, you're really hungry.
There's only one time I remember where we had hot food. It's cold. They brought up hot food. God, that was a luxury, hot food. We all went and sat in the snow and ate. And in back of this farmhouse was a pigsty or a pig pen. And in there were two pigs. I never seen so two skinny pigs in my whole life as those two were, because there's no doubt the farmer and his wife or whoever, they took off, wham, they're going. And in this pig pen laid a German soldier. And the funny part of it at the time, one pig had a hold of his neck, and the other pig had a hold of his leg, and they were pulling in opposite directions. In other words, these pigs were hungry.
First thing you look for when you're after a battle, you go into town, you look for something to drink. Whiskey, beer, anything you can find. 'Cause you want to have a drink and hoop it up a little bit. That's the first thing. The next thing is you want to take a shower. But most of the soldiers always look for something to drink.
For the young men of the 681st, life in the Airborne began with a draft notice, enlistment, or a dare.
I didn't even know what airborne meant. I thought I'm going to be watching airplanes. That's what I had the impression of. I really didn't know. I didn't sign up for no airborne. Later on, I signed up for jumping.
I first volunteered for the service about 1942. Rather than go into combat, I volunteered to help be in the service but build the Alcan Highway, the highway in Alaska.
Saw the Pathé News come on, and the 82nd had just jumped in Sicily. So the following day, there was 26 of us, got tired of it. We went down to First Service Command in Boston. We asked about it. They told us about the Airborne, that they were looking for a few good men.
Airborne is the greatest. And, the paratroopers, glider troopers, they're one big happy family. And that $50, the only reason why most of them guys went to paratrooper because $50 more a month. That was a lot of money back in them days.
I went in as a private, okay? At first off, I didn't want to be kicked around. I didn't want to be in that war. I was drafted. Let's put it this way, I was drafted. But hell, if I'm going to be in this war and I can't get out of it, I better look out for Bob Harsh, and I better take some responsibility for it.
At Camp McCall, North Carolina, the 17th Airborne trained under the command of General William Miley. There, the men of the 681st Glider Field Artillery Battalion were forged into a combat unit. Each man assigned his role in the execution of the battle plan.
As an artillery officer, I was trained to support the infantry. To support the infantry to a situation which they cannot handle. Sometimes I'm shooting at just one machine gun that's tied on a thing. And sometimes I'm shooting at a tank that they can't get. Anything that I can support them, because in a sense to think of, these boys are going up with a fly swatter to try to take the enemy. Here I'm coming up with a big bat.
I was originally a scout corporal, as they call it. It's more or less Carl Aaron and myself. We were in that same kind of category. And, well, the job was, as we get into position, we were supposed to line up our howitzers, as we call them, into the direction where the fire is going to go.
I was what they called a forward observer, which meant you went with the infantry right on line with them, and you adjusted artillery fire on any enemy installations or trucks or a group of people. And if you could drop a shell within 30 yards of your target for the first round, they call it the first shot, that was pretty good.
My gun section was one of the best gun sections. I trained the boys, and I worked with them at nighttime, and when I had someone that fouled up, I'd give him punishment myself, KP, or give him retreat duty or stuff. I made sure they did foul up overseas. But my motto was always, you either kill or be killed.
August 1944. Training and maneuvers completed, the 17th Airborne embarked for England. At base camp in Swindon, near London, the men of the 681st waited for combat orders.
I liked England. Once in a great while, you'd get a pass to go to London. First time in London, I come out of Paddington Station. It's a railroad station. And I heard a real loud noise like a washing machine, and I looked up in the air. Little shitting kid next to me, he says, "Don't worry, soldier, it's only a buzz bomb." Now, this little kid, let's say he's 6, 7 years old, he was used to that. That was nothing to him. To me, it was something strange. He said to me, "Soldier, if you can hear them, that's fine. When you can hear them, they're coming down."
You know, the war was going good before the Battle of the Bulge, you know, and we were saying to ourselves, well, maybe they won't use us. No, we hope they don't use us, right? But we were still prepared. We still had a semi-feeling, at least for myself, this is what we trained for. And if you don't get into it, you've been caught short. You've been denied something.
We all hoped definitely to get into combat. In fact, many of us were upset that we did not get into the Holland campaign. See, there was D-Day campaign, there was a Holland campaign, and then there was the Rhine River at Wesel.
I understand we were alerted for Holland, to jump to Holland. I don't know what happened that we didn't. Then there were some stories that we were also alerted for Bastogne.
As far as our assignment was concerned, we knew we were going to be fighting Germans and be on German soil, but as far as when, nobody knew. Then all of a sudden, within 8 hours, everybody was out of there.
The first shock of killing somebody is not a thing that you like to remember, but it's something you can't forget.
The first position that we were in on the Meuse River was actually a huge crater from a shell hole left from World War I. And I did some thinking, you know, 25 years ago, and now here we go again.
For the next 4 months, the 17th Airborne fought from Belgium to Germany. At the Meuse River, Saint-Vith, Houffalize, the Rhine, Wesel, and Münster. To the men of the 681st, now hardened by daily combat, all battles became one battle, with the only victory being survival.
I was standing there with Bruce Petrie and Kenny Mulholland, and a few of the other guys were in the house. And all of a sudden, you could not hear the explosion of the gun, nor the shell hitting the house, because the gun was that close. And first thing I did was duck, and I turned around, and there's Petrie and Mulholland on the ground. The back of Bruce Petrie's head was wide open. You could see the brains. Kenny Mulholland, I think, got it in the neck or the chest, I forget now offhand. First thing I did, that fear come over me. I was always afraid, but especially at that moment, at that time, not tomorrow's something else. First thing I did was run as fast as I could to get away from the two fellows that were laying there.
When you hear them shells coming, Bunny, you hug good old Mother Earth, all right? And you're trying to get some kind of protection that you can, no matter what it is. Ravine on the side of the ditch, alongside of the Jeep, anything to protect you.
Bill Danzo, another friend of mine, Harold Hartridge, he says, Fisher, look over there, and there you could see the gun, the German 88. And you could see kids around it. And I says, is that the son of a bitch? That's it. So then we more or less, there was no more gunfiring. The kids took off. We caught up to them, after maybe 200-300 yards. And naturally, they raised their hand, comrade. We just killed them right then and there.
You get mad. Over there, when someone got hit, you got mad. And a lot of guys put up their temper. And they got Tommy guns, and they just grab a Tommy gun and just start shooting. They didn't give a damn. Like when we, in the Bulge, when we captured prisoners. A lot of times, if someone tried to pull something, some of the sergeants or the privates and that, they just take a Tommy gun and just shoot them right now. When
you first go over, you don't hear much about, trying to take any prisoners, because you got enough of rations just for yourself. You got to kind of survive, and you're waiting for your main troops.
And as far as killing the enemy goes, and the animal that's in you, one day, we was on forward observation again, and there was a big German hospital over on the hill. Great big red cross on the roof. And I says to Danzo, I says, let's shoot the shit out of that. We gave coordinates back to the gun position, and the first shell damn near dropped on the actual cross itself, that big red cross that's on the roof. And I said, fire 3 rounds each for effect. Well, all the shells went into the hospital roof. All these people come out of the hospital, I don't know, all of them, in wheelchairs, and running, and limping, and crawling. And the animal that's in you make you laugh like hell when you see that.
It's hard to get used to losing your own man. The week before, as like I had mentioned, you were close to the man, keeping warm, okay? Now all of a sudden, he's not there to keep you warm anymore, okay? You get so tied up inside that it brings in an anger, I would say, inside of yourself. He's taking the life of my buddy here, But this is part of battle. You realize that that's part of battle, and so it makes you a little more savage, so to be. It comes right back to him, and you say, and this boy was right alongside him, maybe a half a hedgerow away. maybe 3 feet from you. Why him and not me?
And I guess I was lucky because they say I don't know, they say I flew up about 15 feet in the air and then I landed in mud. I guess they couldn't find me there for a while. But well, I was really fortunate. I mean, I had a couple of broken things here and there, but could have been bad. Could have been real bad, but I got away with it. Completely annihilated the Jeep and everything. The radio operator got it awful bad.
I never was wounded. Say I had a couple guys killed, front of me, back of me. Had fellows wounded very close to me, very seriously wounded, whether they died or not. Later, sorry to say you don't keep track of that, you go on.
We were going up to this farmhouse to observe the next morning. The farmhouse is on a bit of a hill, which is fine. You want to observe from the top of a hill. So Lieutenant Lemberger made the mistake of parking the Jeep right by the house rather than put it in the woods. There's always a woods nearby. You can park a Jeep or hide it someplace. Next morning, as it got light, the Germans saw the American Jeep parked by the house, and they knew somebody was in there. Along comes a tank, and it stopped. And Lieutenant Lemberger says, "What do we do?" I said, "I don't know." He says, "I'm going to have a look." He opened the back door, the tank motor started, boom, the gun went off, and Lemberger vanished. Walter Bird and myself went out the back door, or the front door, hidden in a pile of horseshit. It might sound kind of raunchy, but it's better than dying. Till the damn near light, him and I went back and crossed, I think it was the Issel Canal.
So I said, "You hold my gun," and then I jumped in. I said, "Geez, Christ, I can't swim." He said, "Hell, neither can I, but we got to cross that damn creek. I don't know how."
This canal was probably, 20, 25 feet wide. It was moonlight again. Across there, I could see an American soldier. "Halt." We did. "What's the password?" We forgot.
I forgot the password. So did he.
Walter says, "We're American troops and we're coming over." He says, "Here, hold my gun." I held it. He says, "I can't swim, you know." I said, "Okay." He held the gun. He started wading. It was only waist deep. I didn't know that. I said, "Wait a minute, goddammit, Bird. I can't swim either."
Boy, we were filthy. I was filthy, and Donnie was filthy, and Bruce and them. And they were staying in a farmhouse, and they had 2 girls there. So when we reported back to Captain Wright said, "Now, Bird, you go down and take a shower." He said, "Go out and pitch your tent." And I said, "Well, then you could give us something to drink." So he pulled out this, he always had that black and white Scott, Captain Wright did. I don't know how the hell he got it overseas, but he got it. And he pulled out this Scotch, you know, and we had a couple of drinks. And he said, "Another thing, Bird, there's a couple of women here." He said, "Now, don't you be fraternized with them." I said, "Captain, just give me a drink. I'll take a shower. I'm going to bed. I'm tired." So I go out and take a shower, and they had these girls dumping water, carrying water, bridging off. So I thought, Jesus Christ, this is nice. Down in the basement. So I went out and pitched a tent. Pretty soon I heard like a snake. Shh, shh, shh. And I said, "What the hell you want?" So they bring me out some eggs. They fried some eggs, brought me out some eggs, and they had eggs and some bread there. So I got talking to Pontiac. He's only about 2 tents away from me. He woke up, he said, "Hey, Bird, I'm next." And Christ, Captain Wright heard him holler that, and right away, I got court-martialed and everything else. And I told Pontiac, I said, "What the hell's the matter with you?" Because he was on guard duty. He's supposed to be on guard duty that night, but he was in his tent sleeping. I told Pontiac, I said, "Never again." Whenever I pitched the tent, it was away from Pontiac, because he's always a dipshit, find out what everybody else was doing. He was the angel.
Walter Bird, I would have to say, was born a soldier. I mean, he had his ups and downs. Like I says, he happened to get busted a couple of times.
Well, Bird was made sergeant and broke, I think it was 7 or 9 times.
Well, the first time I got busted I never got busted until I got with the 17th.
If he was a private or a sergeant, it never affected his duties or nothing. He'd be just as good private or he'd be just as good as a staff sergeant.
Walter Bird, in my opinion, and a few other people's opinion, he was a good luck piece. He was good to be with. He never got hit. Purple Hearts, Bronze Star, no, not Purple Heart, 2 Bronze Stars. If you were with him, you think you led a charmed life. When we went over the Rhine, landed in the glider, and we could see a house a little over a little hill, and where I was laying there, you could look up and I could see the house, and Sergeant Webster is next to me. He said, "What do you see?" I said, "I see the house down there where the Germans are in." "Where?" I said, "Over that little rise in the hill." He looked up and boom, he got it right in the forehead. So then I hear Bird singing, "When my blue moon turns to gold again." You ever heard that song? Right out in the middle of a field. Had the gun laying on the ground, and he was walking back and forth trying to put a 75 millimeter pack howitzer together to fire 1 round into the house. Well, up there, I know for sure Sergeant Kelly got killed. I forget who else it was. Bird never got touched.
On March 24, 1945, the 17th Airborne was airdropped across the Rhine River onto German soil. In the assault, codenamed Operation Varsity, the 17th fought as they were trained as an airborne combat force. One of their objectives was to capture the city of Essen, key industrial center of the Ruhr Valley.
We're swaying back and forth. I think your life was right in front of your face again. You know, you see the ack flying around. It was, you know, scary. Enormous amount of aircraft in the air. You know, it's such an experience. I just can't put it in words, really and truly. And then you look at the ground. I mean, if you looked at the ground, you're seeing ground troops going in with their amphibious paraphernalia to cross the Rhine River, you know, and what an operation.
Basically, there are 3 types of gliders in World War II. One was a CG-4A, they called it, and actually it was tubular steel.
Just bent, you know, to its right shapes, and then you got a little canvas around it.
The whole front end lifted up, whereby you would load in your Jeep.
And then if you go into with a Jeep, you only got about 4 or 5 ties. And then when you're being towed by the airplane, of course, it's very noisy when you're being towed.
When you rode in them, the wingtips wave back at you.
In a CG-4A would either take 1 75 millimeter, 1 pack 105, or 1 trailer ammunition, or I think 13 soldiers, or they'd take 1 Jeep.
And the glider goes up and down, to the side, to the side.
They were nice to ride in after they would cut the tow line, co-pilot or pilot, and then you'd glide down. Then it's quiet. Then you could hear that you're being shot at.
We were about half an hour out of Paris. And again, we had a first, the 17th is first, and they took us double tow to a C-47. There's 2 gliders being pulled by a C-47. I was looking over, and one of the gliders hit another glider on this double tow. I can still see today the right wing of the one glider fell off, and immediately the pilot released his tow chain from tow rope from the C-47. And I watched him all the way down, and he smashed right into a graveyard in back of a church.
A glider is nothing but a means of transportation. You have no protection, nothing at all for it. You don't have the control after a glider is let loose. I mean, you have it as to picking out a spot to land.
I believe that the Rhine drop, which the Army referred to as Varsity, was very successful. The reason I say that is when the gliders come in and when the paratroopers come in, they did not overshoot the field or undershoot the field. I don't think that ever happened on Varsity or the Rhine drop. I think basically all of them, majority of the troops that landed, were near or damn near on where they were supposed to be.
We were cut loose after we got over our drop zone. And this is it, we're coming down. Okay, now you can't see out of the glider because it's all canvas out the side. The only thing you can see is directly out the front. So as the glider's nose is coming down, there we see the field. There's 4 or 5 gliders to the right and to the left. This is it, go down earlier. My particular glider came down as a split rail fence. The glider is still going pretty fit. Went through the second one, went through the third one. Luckily, we went between the posts. Now, I don't know whether the glider pilot was lucky enough not to hit the upright post as it's going through it. At the same time that we landed there, we're receiving fire. And it's coming from this house that's right aside. And it's probably a farmhouse that went with this thing. And there's somebody shooting up there. We get the hell out of the glider, and you can hear the snaps of these things. Look up to the left, and it's a woman. It's this woman firing us. And here's my corporal next to her. I only have a 45 and a thing. And I says, get that one. And she says, well, it's a woman, you know. I says, woman, hell, she's shooting at you. If you don't get her, she's going to get us.
Within 24 hours, Operation Varsity achieved its primary objective of gaining a foothold across the Rhine. During the assault, the 17th Airborne Division captured 3,000 men of the German Wehrmacht. Moving swiftly to the east, the 17th and its allies took Münster on April 2, 1945, and Essen, site of the infamous Krupp Iron Works, on April 10. The capture of Duisburg 2 days later successfully completed the invasion and destroyed Nazi resistance in the Ruhr Valley. The young men of the 681st were no longer untested. Months of ceaseless combat with a brutal enemy through a cruel winter had molded them into veterans.
We had a hell of a time in Munster because the civilians, there were German hid in there, in the home, in the basement now, giving the orders to the civilians in the town. The Hospital East was the same way. A lot of them places, the German soldiers were down in there, giving the orders for the civilians. And I would say that some of the civilians killed many of our boys that the Germans did in some of them towns.
And every night we were on what they call curfew duty. All the German civilians had to be in the house by, I forget now, it was either 7 or 9 o'clock at night. There was 2 English soldiers in the front of the Jeep and I was in back with a rifle. And the windshield was down and the upright piece of angle that's always in the front of a Jeep was very apparent, and thank God it was, because somebody had stretched a cable across the road. We hit the cable. Now, naturally, the impact of the car hitting the cable stretched a little bit. It stopped us. But thank God for that upright piece of angle on the front of the Jeep, or we'd all lost our heads.
We had German soldiers just come out of woods. You know, this was the latter part of the war already. You know, it's just a matter of time when everything was over with, at that point anyhow. And they were coming out and they just took their helmets off. They left all their weapons right in the woods, and maybe about 50, 75 just came marching out pretty rather uniformly, and we were just surprised that we seen them coming out. I mean, if they had guns and everything, they could have had a lot of fun out there. I mean, as far as wiping us out maybe or something.
I was on grave registration for a week. That is a miserable job. They're stinking. Some of us, I don't know, we were volunteered to be on grave registration, or we were just, you volunteer. We had to go search a certain area where guys had been killed. And it just happened to be in the area that we searched, it was in water, maybe knee deep. And as you walked, you could see the bodies there. They were laying in there. They were bloated. You couldn't recognize them, but you knew they were American soldiers. We were supposed to take them out of the water, put them in, what do they call them? Bed bag, or dead bags, whatever they call them, and take the dog tags off of them. Well, even though we all stood upwind to do this, you were constantly gagging or throwing up. You never get used to that smell.
It's like one battle is the same as the other battle. It just took place at this village. It repeated itself. It was to turn around and say this was worse at this village than it was at the other village, and what village that was, I can't remember that. It was all hell.
May 8, 1945, VE Day. The conflict in Europe is over, but not the memories of the enemy, the battles, the experience of war.
As far as a German soldier goes, they were damn good. They were really brutal. And that's what you really have to be brutal, violent. And like I say, you gotta have that animal in you. They could kill. No second thoughts. Even when I would shoot and hit somebody, even before I pulled the trigger, I would have second thoughts. But I don't know if they did. They were so damn brutal that nothing seemed to bother them. But when they were finally surrounded or cornered, they were as meek and mild as you and I. But they were damn good soldiers.
There are times that you thought they were better than us, but by the whole token, they had to have commandability as an individual, somebody to tell them really what to do. And if you broke up and got them in turmoil or something like that, I don't think they could stack up to our boys.
The infantry, the artillery, the medics, the engineers, everybody of one person. We're just a great big family. And I think that's why the 17th was one of the greatest airborne, because we're not in active duty right now, but we're going to end up in one of the greatest airborne outfits that ever fought in Europe.
Coming back, you know, I'll have to admit, you had a little, you've seen a little bit, anyhow. You've seen some of your friends killed, you made good friends, and you grew up a lot. You grew up a lot. I know in the 3 years that I was in there, I think I grew up by 10, 15 years as far as mentally. And of course, I used it as an excuse maybe when I first got out of the service, you know what I mean? Like, take a drink here, you know what I mean? You know, everybody's a hero and all that when you get out of the service, you know. But there was a difference between the 3 years before and after. There's just altogether a lifetime of experiences.
When you get back and you hear a man talking and what he did in combat, you know, and he's doing it, and he's sort of glorifying that, and you're listening to it. If you've really been into the thick of it, a lot of times you don't want to talk about it. You know, it's something that you really want to put out of your mind. That's my personal feelings. I wouldn't run around and tell the guy, oh yeah, I was in the Battle of Bulge, I killed so many men in a fight and did this kind of thing, you know?
I dream about landing right in front of an 88 battery or something crazy like that, where you have no chance, you're dead. Everything's death. I mean, that you dream about in these things. At least I think of them, as I say now, maybe once a year I think of these. When I first came back, I thought of them a couple times a week about it. And generally it was like, you know, going through a woods or something and going out with a Jeep and doing a survey or something up on the front lines for the battery to come in and walking right up to a sniper and getting it right between the eyes, as old Patton said, you know, something like that. Everything deal with death.
Was it all worthwhile? Was there another way of doing it? And there are times that you, like I say, when you see these young boys doing in there, if you sleep at night, and all of a sudden, you know, you wake up and your mind is back to this. You're talking about 3 or 4 years of your life into here. And You can't cut that out. It takes, you try to cut it out, but you can't. Somehow it sneaks back in. A couple of words, something on the TV, you'd see some of this stuff. And it would affect me in such a way that I don't want to look at that. I don't want that memory, you know. And other times, it's different.
They were forced into a situation, and they made the best of it. And that's what they, no matter how hard it hurt them, they still did the job to get it done. So I think that's, you described it about as good as you can.
As all of us go through our pathways of life, we are governed by our conscience and our ability to reason. To me, that is part of our soul, and it separates us from the animals. Now, there are other times in cases of extreme anger, hate, frustration, panic, fear, especially fear, your conscience and your reasoning power go into the background. And out of you comes an animal. And this animal has one prime instinct: to survive.